Have you ever heard a story where a person's best intentions lead to two totally different outcomes? Well, today we're diving into one of those. It's a story about a brand new king, a sacred object that was said to hold the very presence of God, and two attempts to move it. One ends in absolute tragedy, and the other in unbelievable joy. So, what on earth made the difference? And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? It's the central mystery we're going to unpack. How can doing something you think is good, especially something for God, go so horribly wrong? Believe me, the answer reveals a really powerful principle that's just as relevant for us today as it was thousands of years ago. All right, so to really get this story, you first have to understand the man at the center of it all, King David. He has just become king of a united Israel, but let me tell you, his journey to get there was anything but easy. His entire life story is just one example after another of his deep reliance on God's guidance. I mean, think about this guy's path. He went from being a fugitive, literally running for his life from the old king, to ruling over just his own tribe. Then, after a brutal civil war, he finally becomes king of the entire nation. So once he secured the kingdom with his military and set up a new capital in Jerusalem, David turns to what he sees as his most important mission of all, getting the kingdom right spiritually. And this was the key to everything, the Ark of the Covenant. Now, this was not just some fancy religious artifact. To the Israelites, this was the symbolic throne of God on earth, the place where heaven and earth literally met. It held the Ten Commandments and represented God's covenant, his unbreakable promise with his people. So for David, bringing this ark into his new capital city, Jerusalem, was the ultimate statement. It was him declaring to the world, this new united Israel will be a nation with God at its very center. So with his kingdom finally secure, David gets the whole nation together for this massive celebration. The plan is to bring the ark, which had been basically sitting in storage at some guy named Abinadab's house for decades, to Jerusalem. You can just imagine the atmosphere. It's electric, right? Filled with music, praise. It feels like a perfect day. What could possibly go wrong? And then, just like that, disaster strikes. You see, they put the ark on a brand new cart, which sounds like a respectful thing to do, but the road is bumpy, the oxen stumble, and the ark lurches. And Uzzah, one of the men guiding it, does what any of us would probably do. He instinctively reaches out to stop this sacred object from falling. And in that instant, the celebration turns to sheer horror. Uzzah is killed, right there on the spot. The party is over. David is just completely shaken. He's confused. He's angry. And he is terrified. What went wrong? His intention was pure, right? But the method was totally flawed. He was moving the ark the way the Philistines, Israel's enemies, had done it, on a cart. He'd completely ignored the specific law that said it must be carried on the shoulders of the priests. And you might think, why does that detail matter so much? Well, because carrying it was a personal, costly act of worship. It required human effort, humility. A cart, well, that's just impersonal. It was human convenience taking the place of divine reverence. David is so terrified and unwilling to risk another catastrophe that he just aborts the mission. He diverts the ark to the nearest home he can find, which belongs to a man named Obed-Edom. Now, at this moment, you can imagine nobody wants to be near this holy and apparently very dangerous object. But Obed-Edom, he opens his home to it. So the ark stays at Obed-Edom's house for just 3 months. Now keep in mind, this thing had been tucked away for decades before this. 3 months is a really short time. But man, those 3 months were about to completely change David's understanding of everything. Before long, word gets back to King David, and it's not news of another disaster, it's news of unbelievable blessing. In just those 3 months, Obed-Edom's entire family, his household, everything he owned had been blessed immensely. This is the light bulb moment for David. He realizes the problem wasn't God being unwilling to be near his people, it was the way they had approached him. This news from Obed-Edom's house just completely reignites David's desire. That fear he had, it's replaced by a renewed holy passion. He gets it now. God wants to bless, not punish. He just needs to be approached with reverence. So David gears up for a second attempt, and this time, he is determined to do it right. And wow, the contrast between the two attempts is just stunning. It shows us that it was never about the what, moving the ark. It was always about the how. A brand new cart versus being carried on shoulders. Impersonal convenience versus personal reverence. And look at the outcomes. Death and fear on one side, blessing and pure joy on the other. This time, everything is different. The law is followed to the letter. The priests carry the ark. There's this profound sense of reverence, with sacrifices being offered continually, like every few steps. And what's most amazing is the unrestrained joy. David himself, the king, throws off his royal robes and dances with pure, unashamed abandon. This isn't some quiet, somber duty. It's a wild, full-on national celebration. So what does this whole dramatic saga actually teach us? I mean, it's way more than just a history lesson about an ancient box, right? It reveals a deep spiritual principle about the nature of God's presence. Here's the crucial point. The ark was a symbol for the very presence of God. And what the story shows in such a dramatic way is that welcoming that presence into your life, on God's terms, with reverence, is the direct pipeline to blessing. It's not about earning it, but about humbly making space for it. And when you look closer, you see this amazing pattern emerge in every house that welcomed the ark. Abinadab's house was a faithful guardian for years. Obed-Edom's house, even when it was scary, opened its doors and was just showered with blessings. And finally, when David brought the ark to his house, the city of Jerusalem, his entire kingdom received the promise of being established forever. The pattern is just undeniable. Ultimately, this is the big takeaway. David learned that approaching God wasn't something to be afraid of, but something to be desired more than anything else. He learned that making a home for the divine in your life isn't a heavy, burdensome chore. In fact, it's the very source of all your joy, your purpose, and your blessing. And you know, that leaves us with a question that echoes from David's ancient story right into our lives today. David fought and planned and celebrated to bring the symbol of God's presence into the very center of his kingdom. It kind of makes you stop and wonder, doesn't it? What have we placed at the center of ours?